Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Prop Talk. I am your host, Mikey Trudel, and joining me today as co-host, filling in for Chris Call, we got the president of the Property Masters Guild, Mr. Jeffrey Johnson.
Hey there, Mikey. How are you? It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy you're
Big
here.
Big shoes to fill losing Chris, but I'll do my best.
No, it's okay. We got the prez here. Running the boards for us today, we got the amazing Remy de la Mora once again.
Buenos tardes.
That's right. The staple. So, he's out here technical directing, doing the video switching, and helping us out with some fun clips. Excited for this episode today because we got a very special guest that flew all the way from Vancouver, Canada, just to be here with us, I'm sure. We got Dean Eilertson, the legend.
Welcome, Dean.
My arms are so tired from Saline.
And nobody was on the rim shot. Great to see you, Dean. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm glad I finally got to get on a plane and come down and put some faces to the names.
Yeah, it's also a very warm day today, so my friend Dean has told me that his face feels like it's in a microwave.
Yeah. I think we all went to lunch, and I think he was like, "This is a cold day." I was like, "Oh yeah, it's only 103. It's usually 115."
Well, welcome to sunny California.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Dean.
Yeah, so you've been part of the Prop Masters Guild since we opened up to internationally to Canada and everything like that, and you have a pretty long standing reputation in Vancouver and in Canada. Actually, just in the Prop Masters world at all, your resume is absolutely insane. You've done some of the biggest shows there have been that go back. So I guess we should start from the beginning, right? Where are you from?
Yes.
Where'd you come from?
Yeah.
I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta. Went to art school in Calgary, 1972. And shortly after that, left art school, worked on my own, moved back to Jasper, did a lot of climbing. 76, I moved out to Montreal to shadow a professor that I'd studied under in Calgary. And Montreal, for a while there, I was the starving artist. It was bilingual province. I didn't speak French. So I found this scenic shop owned by a British guy, Mike Waterman, and I applied to be an apprentice.
Oh.
And I got hired, $5 an hour, and then started the journey of becoming a scenic carpenter. Worked with Mike for 5 years, and then broke away, opened my own shop. It was called Montreal Scenic Services. Montreal was non-union. So typically they would bring the drawings around to all the different shops and you'd put in your quotes.
Yeah.
And I had a pretty keen sense on budgeting and breakdowns. I don't know where that came from. And I was building scenery, living in Montreal, learning about film.
In art school, what was your bent? What was your, you a painter? Are you a sketch? I mean, what does art school mean? I'm not artistic, so.
With the professor that I studied under, it was drawing and painting.
I see.
When I got to Montreal, I think there's a Greek saying, if you're going to become yourself, you have to kill your teacher. Is there
something like that? Sure.
Anyway, he had just affected my mind and my psyche so much. Painting and drawing were off the books at that point, so that left sculpture.
Oh.
And I broke away from what I'd been doing and got more and more. I discovered artists that he had never talked about, which made me very angry because some of these people were amazing. And my direction with sculpture just took this other route. Did commissions, got Canada Council grants. It was like I was going to become a sculptor. And there's one night, stumbling home from another gallery opening where people show up for the free booze. And I'm staggering down St. Catherine Street, and it's raining. And I come upon this scene, and it's all these people standing on the street, lined up down the block, around the corner. And I'm looking at this, so I don't know what was premiering in the theater that night, but people in my mind had read the newspaper, made an aesthetic choice, for themselves, where they were going that night, what they were spending their money on, and standing in the rain in a line to go see it.
That's art.
That's a lot more powerful than
Yeah.
art. And that's, you tell me how I started getting interested in film, that was the night.
That's when it clicked.
Mm-hmm.
Was there enough filming going on in your area to come up with an idea of how to join it then?
It was seasonal.
Yeah.
And through Mike in the shop, we were doing TV commercials or Sadie Bronfman theater sets, the Centaur. And then there were low-budget
They
shows.
would come through looking for crews.
Yeah, they not so much looking for crews. There's two types of film industry in Quebec. There's the Quebecois French-based industry, and then there's the English-based where lower-budget shows would come in. Typically in Montreal in the day, art department was bilingual. Grips and Electrics were French, that sort of thing. And you'd build, the first show I think I worked on was called Pinball Summer, renamed when it came out in the theater Pickup Summer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they should have made a film about the crew making the film, because that probably was more of a Pickup Summer than the movie, right?
Was the scenic shop that you were in, was it all primarily like for sets for TV and stuff like that? Or are you doing like everything, like from installments to just anything that would need anything built?
Commercials, theater,
Yeah.
and then lower budget stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So it was, you were connected to the film industry in some way, just, yeah.
Yeah.
And your family, was your family artistic? Did you have
My
siblings,
mom,
people that were-
they came from Saskatchewan. My parents were Depression kids.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up, it's a case of if you're having fun, something must be wrong.
Yeah.
And my dad was a truck driver. Ended up in his later years being a commercial realtor. And I was the artist. My younger sister was a gymnast. My older sister was a nurse. My brother was a quality control engineer. So
You were the artistic outlet.
I was the outcast.
Yeah.
Almost. But, that's the direction I was going in. And there was something in my mind that I was going to become a famous artist. It was just never a question, right?
Well, from our point of view, you have become a famous artist.
Yeah, in
I
hindsight.
mean, it's a different type of format, but you're certainly still sculpting every day when you're working. It's a film that you're working on, not a sculpture.
How did you find props?
It was 86. I was in Montreal. If you know the politics of Quebec, they've spent several times trying to separate from the rest of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If you live in Quebec, you get nothing in English from the government. Everything's in French. I didn't grow up in Quebec. My parents were starting to get older, and I hadn't been home for a number of years. So the goal was to move back home and
Right.
or closer to home. The films we were working on in Montreal were not all that great to be a part of. But there were films being done on the West Coast, McCabe and Mrs. Miller. That one in an instant just caught me, and it like a magnet, like a moth to the flame. A friend of mine got out to Vancouver. They were doing the 5th season of Airwolf, and the town is tiny at that point
Right.
in terms of industry, and they needed a prop master. He knew I wanted to get out of Montreal. And he contacts me, and I'm going, well, what about the scenic side? And he says, oh, no, that's dialed in. They got people out
need
here
that.
for that, but we need a prop master. So just be as organized as you always are, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Big mistake. Talk about deer in the headlights. Like learning
On the
blank
fly.
firing guns. I had George Bomber was the effects guy at the time, and he looked out for me. We were renting firearms from shady companies. He would come over and look at something and check the barrel and take it back to his truck and come back to me and, no, we're not using this one.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Or he'd make new constrictors for the AK-47s because the ones that were put in there they're going to blow up.
No, I think a lot of us, me included, had somebody once upon a time very kindly kind of help me out. Not a special effects guy on a Western. I didn't know what I was doing at that point. But he pulled me aside and said, oh, you're going to need to have this stuff. Oh, I had no idea. So that particular effects man may have been one of your guiding souls.
Oh, yeah. That whole Airwolf episode was a learning curve. At the end of it, I learned two things. One, I know nothing about being a prop master. And two, if I'm going to learn this job, I better start working for other people and learn something. And in Vancouver at the time, if you talk to people, it's like, what do you do? Well, I'm a prop master. What do you do? Well, I'm a buyer. We're all the on-set people. There was maybe 2 or 3 that decided, well, I'll be on set. And I went, well, that's where I'm going, because I'll have more opportunity to get a job.
Yeah.
And learn.
Yeah, you'll learn a ton on set.
Yep.
Yeah. So you just decided that you were going to assist for a little bit. So how did that, how did you find people to work for or whatever? Did you have like a prop master that you would know to try to work under?
No. At the time, it was IA 891. It was unionized. There was seniority. Right. Everyone in the hall had to be working before you could get a permit job. So it was just lucking out and getting day calls, whether it was set deck or props, to get on set. I had that scenic background of 10 years. I had a climbing background. I had a whole bunch of things, of skills that I could sell. But it was over 700, almost 800 days of permitted days before I finally got in the union.
Yeah. And how quick did you find those days?
It took probably, had to be 1990, 89, 90.
Yeah.
By the time I finally got it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I think everybody has that journey, and very few people just step into the business.
Yeah, and I think I asked you this question earlier, but for the people, like, how often does the local out in Vancouver actually open or did they open their books up? Like, how many times did it get to the point where enough people were working that you were able to get permitted days?
It's funny, back then I would call it the IATSE Golf and Country Club. Exclusive membership only. Right. Because I had a 10-year resume from Montreal that combined fine arts exhibitions and awards plus the work I'd done out there. And whoever was on the prop master department board looking at resumes, I get this letter back going like, we don't recognize any of the titles you've worked on. You have to start over.
Oh, that's brutal.
And yeah, that was the reality of it.
Right. I want to talk about the climbing background and everything like that. I was excited about it because I haven't met another climber prop master that has a history of that.
They mean mountain climbing,
yes,
and rock climbing.
Well, we were saying adventure junkies is a history,
adrenaline,
and stuff like that. Because I don't know, we've talked about this in the past where. Greg Billson has kind of been in the past an agent for a lot of us, and when I first, I think, got into the good graces of ISS, and he was helping me out with that stuff, he's like, what kind of jobs do you want? Like, what is your specialty? And on this thing, and I like thought about it. I was like, well, my specialty, I haven't worked much of them, but my specialty would be adventure movies because I already have the knowledge of it. So I was like, I think if you call me for anything that's rock climbing, canyoneering, like snowboarding, scuba diving, like I have certifications and all of that stuff, and I think I can do it better than a lot of people can because I have the knowledge. Probably podcasting at this point now too, but.
Did you ever get any of those jobs?
No, because we were plagued by a pandemic and then a strike, so not yet. But that's the thing. But I know, Dean, you worked on K2, which is a huge thing. So like, I want to talk about that a little bit because going in with that background, like that sounds almost like a dream job where you have your hobby that
it's Mikey's fantasy job.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We put ourselves in danger to have fun and I mean, not necessarily put ourselves in danger, but like rock climb and do all this fun stuff. So to do a show like that where you have like the rappelling knowledge, you know how to tie the knots, you've been in these situations before that you're putting people in on screen, like you got the knowledge already to go around it. How was doing something like that?
Well, no one's questioning your abilities.
Yeah.
For sure. That's not in the mix. And naively, I was being quite critical about the script early on. They hired David Balfour out of England, who now, if you look up him, he's written the book on prop mastering over there.
Oh, yeah.
He was the art or prop master, he hired another fellow locally in Vancouver, Chris Wright, and then I came on as the on-set guy.
And you had background in climbing.
Climbing, alpine climbing, winter ascents, snow and ice, technical rock.
Right.
I taught climbing for a number of years in Jasper when I lived there.
Yeah. And I mean, I like these types of jobs and stuff I worked on, there was an episode of Horror Stories that I did to where we did an entire week, 5 days in an underwater tank where the whole set was built in a tank and then flooded, and it was 20 feet underwater. Me and my prop assists were one of the few only ones, aside from the dive team that they hired, that were actually scuba certified and were able, they jumped at us to be able to, and gave us, obviously you get the wet bump and everything like that, but they were excited about it because they're like, okay, you can actually still do your prop resets. You can still go down, you can recover everything, and to do all that. And it was one of the best weeks of shooting of my life because, I don't know,
it was in your zone. It's in your wheelhouse.
It's in your zone. It's in your wheelhouse. You kind of already have fun doing that anyways. So was doing K2 a similar beast to that?
I certainly felt in my element.
Yeah.
And there was very few between the mountain safety guys or, say, second unit that came in with a lot of climbing background because of their expertise.
Right.
There wasn't very many of us on the shooting crew that had the qualifications to carry the packs, have snowshoes, walk around in harness, do a fixed line ascents.
Yeah.
The rappelling, all of that stuff, you're pretty well operating on your own on the mountain.
Yeah.
And it was for me, it was fun every day. But, the critical part about being the script, you're also aware of climbing history, and you're aware Reinhold Messner climbed Mount Everest solo without oxygen. So my questions to these guys were, are we doing a period film?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Well, why do we have oxygen? If you're not a competitive climber in this day and age, you wouldn't be climbing K2 or Everest and use oxygen. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So then it becomes a real question because they haven't done their research.
Right.
And I'm new at this, so I had knowledge. I'd already read the magazines and been so entrenched in learning about climbing that I had all this knowledge. And just some of the weirdest conversations with the director and things, setting up a camp. Okay, we're in a couloir. Yeah. Okay, there's going to be an avalanche in the scene. They're taken out. Yeah. And I'm going okay, I've been there. You never on rope. Even if you take off out of the tent to go have a pee, someone's got you on belay. Yeah. It's a different environment. And I'm trying to explain it to them.
Did they care?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Luckily, they stumbled into a prop technical
There's
advisor.
this old thing at the end of the film, Michael Bihn's supposed to be rescuing his partner, and they talk about it, that they're making splints and they're doing this and being really desperate. And I'm going you are desperate. You're in a rare air environment. You're probably hypothermic. You're hydrated, dehydrated. Everything weighs a ton. Everyone who dies of hypothermia in the mountains, they find them backpack full of nice warm clothes and food,
right.
But they're sitting there in a pair of shorts and t-shirt with a smile on their face.
Yeah. So they say the first thing they do is they rip their clothes off because they start to feel really hot.
Yeah. So if you're a climber, you're aware of that. I've been in a situation where we were getting into that desperate point, and I remember trying to close my pack. We're just below summit. It's a storm. We're trying to do a winter ascent, and I'm taking forever to do my backpack up. And it hit me. It's you're in danger. Get moving. And it was all we had to do was start descending and get out of there because we were way under equipped.
Yeah.
Well, that begs the question for me: when you're on K2, how many director's chairs did you have to drag out? And how heavy was Video Village? And surely there were lattes and.
Oh, they were in print-off snowcats with nice heating and monitors set up on the side, parked off to the side of the set.
The sign that says "No crew allowed."
Yeah. They had to carve out all the director's chairs out of snow.
Right. Well, that kind of skill set obviously has done you well. what the unique and Mikey talking about his specialties and scuba and climbing.
I'm Canadian Navy diver trained.
Really?
My.
See,
In
look
high
at it.
school-
I didn't know that either.
In high school, there was no PADI diving, and I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, and there's a pool, and there's these two guys that want to teach diving. It was a 22-week course.
Oh my!
11
Whoa.
weeks of snorkel, 11 weeks of scuba.
Whoa.
And our open water exam was at Lake Wobbleman, which is a freshwater lake next to a coal-fired power plant. So there was an area of the lake that was thawed out from the exhaust water coming off the plant. That's when we went in the water. Tank comes off, you're pushing it through the culvert,
No.
going out into the lake under the ice.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Wow.
Yeah,
How many people are watching over you? Like, what if? Yeah,
they're the two of them.
yeah, the two of them.
That's fascinating to me.
But what it gave me as a skill set, more than anything else, it was when anything got a little scary, risky, you see a lot of people start to panic, and I went the opposite. I slowed down. And I started to find that on the years over on set. I was the guy who started slowing down
Yeah.
and paying attention and sort of focusing on what I needed to get done. Everyone else says, we need a air gun, we need this, we need that. No, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. Here, it's fixed.
Yeah.
Hand it off.
Well, clearly that trauma emergency training as an outdoors person translates really well to that moment of panic.
Yeah.
So it's another skill set that people don't think that they
Well, that's
are preparing for, but they have it.
I think that's what we have to talk about when people say, I want to be in props.
That
Life experience.
Yeah.
You know, do you have another trade? Like my scenic carpentry side, do you have other experience like maybe the climbing or your diving or whatever else? Have you traveled?
yeah.
Have you, I don't know what.
I think that's a big takeaway for a lot of younger property persons
Yeah.
is that you need to have other reference points in life. You have to have had more skill sets,
Yeah.
traveling, other languages, other cultures.
Yeah.
That comes up all the time.
It does. I think that's why I never really thought about. I mean, I had been before Billson asked me that question. I had been in prop mastering for 6-7 years, and then I never thought about it though. Like he asked me that, and he goes, "Okay, what's your like specialty? What type of show your specialty?" I was like, "I've never worked these shows." But I know I would be one of
Yeah.
the bests at it.
Yeah.
Like, I know that that's like what I am already passionate about. And I've done, we said, probably months worth of research for fun, just because I love
Right.
it so
You're
much.
already ahead of the
And
game.
like, we've done it. And Dean and I were talking earlier too, is just like, I mean, when, like tying the knots and feeling the safety while you're on rappel or you're doing this stuff, it's not something you can teach somebody and them feel comfortable on it for a week. If you do it for years and years and years,
Yeah.
then you can jump on a rope in 2 seconds, know what's safe and feel like you're in your comfort zone. And it takes that to actually get to that point. So I don't think I think it's an important skill. And that's why I was like, man, that you be in your element on those shows.
Yeah,
and I think it's important.
People ignore their backgrounds, which is why I often ask assistants or our friend Remy. I just
Right.
realized his backstory with music and theater.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Dean has a wild background of, I don't know anything about that world, but it's so unique to him, but it also translates into your ability to slow down and think clearly and not panic in a moment of pressure.
So maybe at the start of getting into the industry, that's the skills that I was able to bring in
Yeah.
and get ahead. 89, I completely walked away from the industry. I went back to school. I applied as a mature student to a grad program of architecture at UBC.
Ah, real person's job.
And so for 2 years, I'm designing and working in this studio every day and doing all of this. And I'm getting good marks. I'm getting this and that. And I'm telling war stories to, other people around the room. And I'm telling them there's other ways to work. You don't have to be an architect. You'd be a set designer. You'd be.
It translates.
Yeah. 3 of the people graduating in the year ahead of me ended up in the film industry.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And at that time, that's when K2 started calling and everything else. And I just took a sabbatical from the master's program and went back to work and suddenly things were starting to click. I was getting, alive from K2. And
Yeah.
that just segue onto, suddenly we're going to Thailand and working on Heaven and Earth. And
Oh, so cool.
it just became this other world of, I'd had that 2 years to sort of set my mind and readjust my sort of attitude towards work and realizing that I really loved what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it just became more rewarding, I guess.
Where did you guys film in Thailand?
Mainly off Phuket.
Really?
Yeah.
That that whole island area is so gorgeous and beautiful. Were you guys on boats a lot and riding around?
No, we
or
were
anything?
rice paddy fields.
Oh, yeah?
This was Oliver Stone, his third in his Vietnam trilogies.
Oh, nice.
So what was her name? Hey Slip. He'd written the book. Oliver was directing it. We were
Man.
there in 45 Celsius.
A humid, right? Yeah.
I was going to say, what is that, like
It's-
45?
No, it's like
100
100.
plus.
It's like 100 plus. Yeah, but humidity.
At 6 in the morning, the sun comes up and you're
you're
soaked, you're
baking.
drenched.
Yeah.
You got 2 water bottle pouches on your belt.
That's pretty amazing. And you said you did a lot. I mean, if you're diving trained, did that ever translate to any of the shows you ever did? Did you ever get to do on-set diving work?
No.
No.
I mean, the core is probably the closest where we start boring down through the center
Yeah.
of the earth and all that. But, I mean, all this stuff adds up. It gives you appreciation for, okay, what's altitude sickness like? What's this like? What's this like? So many times we're working with actors and they're looking for advice or suggestions on how to do something, right?
Amazing. So you were assisting a lot during this time. When did you feel comfortable enough, I guess, to finally dive fully back into prop mastering?
It's quite a ways down the road. I was on Deep Rising. I'd been working with Grant Swain for probably 5-6 years as his on set. We'd done Time Cop together and things like that. And Grant and I were really cool. Grant was a great builder. He's retired now, but of all the prop masters I've ever worked with, Grant could build props.
Yeah.
He had a mind for it. And we played this good guy, bad guy thing because I'm on set. So Grant would have a great idea. And I'd say, well, yeah, but we need a better way to switch out the batteries or we need this or that. And as a team, I think we worked really well together.
Yeah.
We ended up in Nova Scotia on Dolores Claiborne. And we had some really good times. And Deep Rising, we had just done a TV series called Poltergeist. Wife and I hadn't had a holiday in like 5 years. And I said, okay, like book a trip. We got to go. Otherwise, why are we living together sort of thing? So we booked this trip. We're going to Italy for 3 weeks. And Grant comes in and goes, well, I got Deep Rising. I said, well, Grant, maybe it's this time I'm not doing it with you. Maybe I'll come back and do second unit or whatever. I came back, and the night I landed, the next day I was on set, like jet lag. And Grant had continued building the props, and I hadn't been there, and all of a sudden I'm dealing with stuff that's on set and breaking, and not understanding how much pressure and tension he was under because of the job we were doing. He wasn't too receptive to my suggestions, let's put it mildly. And
Had he had set experience or no?
who? Grant?
Yeah, had he had much
yeah.
set experience? Okay.
Oh, yeah. People like Grant and Jimmy Chow, all those guys come up through an on-set experience and eventually become the prop masters. But I didn't respect the fact that Grant was under so much pressure. Otherwise, I should have been probably more understanding and accommodating. And I got a phone call. A little birdie tells me you're not too happy on the set. And then we've got this Dean Semler show called Firestorm, and we need a prop master. So at lunch, I went up, I interviewed for it, came back to work, got a little message on my pager.
Oh, sure.
And,
Was it 911 or just...
no, but I had to go talk to Grant and say, look, you're not happy, I'm not happy right now. You've got somebody else you seem okay with, let me go. I've been working with you enough times, and I see other people bypassing me because I've been trying to
Hitch
learn
to
the
his
craft.
wagon, yeah.
And he's like, yeah, fine, whatever. I mean, we didn't talk for like a year afterwards. I don't think he was going to forgive me that easily. But it was time to move on. So Firestorm was that time.
Yeah, I had a similar experience where I'd been with the same guy for several years. I've told it to Eugene McCarthy, and he came over one day and said, I think we need a divorce. You need to be your own boss. And I was petrified to go out on my own. And, my wife at the time, she was an on-set person. We're like, well, this is a huge life change to now be the grown-up. So but there comes a time when somebody, you have to make that transition if you're going to continue in this business. And
I think it gets to a point where you have enough of your own ideas.
Yeah.
You start you're in conflict with what their ideas
Yeah.
are, so
Yeah.
you're not supporting them as much anymore. And it takes a lot of that support. It's not easy to do this job and have the degree of confidence you need to go into a meeting and sell an idea or this or that. And the last thing you need is somebody on your own crew.
second guessing.
Yeah.
With other ideas.
Yeah. So when you went and did Firestorm and you came back out of it, did it feel like, all right, yeah, this is what I want to do, period, and you just took prop mastering after that?
Not really.
No.
We had a death on Firestorm. A skydiver died.
Oh, no.
And then we had a location PA a week later in a car accident. It was quite a
Traumatic
thing to be on, and especially with the skydiver, because I had dealt a lot with him, and so for like a year afterwards, I didn't know what I was going through. Finally talked to a doctor about it, and he says, "You're depressed."
Oh, no.
Well, because
Yeah.
it was
a
like
lot of hard
it was
shit.
well because he was skydiving, and we had to put a dummy on him, and they kept changing out who that double was. We put bladders in the dummy so we could alter the weight, because you're dealing with a canopy that's only so many square feet, so you're dealing with the body weight and the canopy size. And I was doing all these things that I thought was helping them, but in hindsight, after the accident and everything else, I just felt like I was helping put nails in his coffin.
Well, that's a heavy burden to carry.
It was,
Put all
and-
that on your own,
But there were
part of the team, but that's certainly not all on you, but it clearly affected you.
I've got a file afterwards, because I had one guy manufacturing stuff for us, and I talked to him one day, and I said, there's got to be a way that there's a report done that this never happens again,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. And he goes, what are you talking about? There's 8 things he did wrong. Any one of those, if he'd survived, he would have had horseshoes up his ass.
Really?
I'm going, what are you talking about? It was a tandem jump. He jumped 2,000 feet below the minimum altitude. He wasn't trained in tandem jumping.
Right.
He used a personal chute, not a tandem chute. It just went on and on and on.
Right.
You realize, okay,
It's not your burden to carry alone.
but it was the doctor acknowledging that I was dealing with that was actually opened the door to let me sort of get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially one of your first shows, to feel like as a prop master, you feel a little bit responsible for everything that goes on set. So something that's a huge traumatic thing.
Yeah,
I think
nobody's
is
going
like,
to tell you. Nobody's going to pull you aside and say, everybody, a lot of people made mistakes. Nobody's ever going to explain that to you.
Oh, until this family sues and you get subpoenaed.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I was subpoenaed by the family's lawyer and the studio to testify because I was the prop master and I'd put a dummy on him and I had a plastic axe on him and yada yada. And at the end of the film, there was this accident on set with the lead actor. Show was shut down. We finished it here at Castaic Lake in January, but that production office shut down so fast.
Oh, yeah.
And I took the remaining harnesses and parachutes and put them in boxes. The couple that were the jump coordinators for the show brought all this stuff back. Everything has a serial number on from the manufacturer. Even the reserve chutes, the main chute, the harness, everything. There's a record on everything. And there's only so many people in, say, the province that are certified to certify them.
right.
So there was a note. I end up getting called by the RCMP. I'm working on another show. They come out with their recorder. I've got my box full of files, and I start opening them up. And here's the invoice from the company we ordered the parachutes from. Here's this, here's that. Here's an invoice from the skydiver who was apparently selling some on the side for other people. that he used in a scene, then they went into the rivers, so he condemned them because the reserve chutes had some coating on them that was water soluble. So the production was on the hook for quite a bit of money. So that was all on record. And then 30 days later, he dies.
Oof. Oh, no.
So I'm on the truck, and I'm looking through my files, and there's this thing on one of the things I got from the jump coordinators. It's with so-and-so. I'm talking to the officer, and I'm going through the list, and I look at him. I said, "Did he jump with this one?" He goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, it's with him." And he said, what are you talking about? I said, "Well, in the reserve," and I open up the reserve, and I show him the card, and there's only 2 people in the province certified to recertify reserve chutes.
Yeah.
And it hadn't been recertified. And there was all these other things, and he goes, "Oh my God," and we're running all the papers through the photocopier on the truck. And the case never went to court. Because he, in fact, had condemned things 30 days earlier. Production had paid for it. In their defense, they had hired the only person they had deemed expert enough, and he had gone as a chance to try to do this stunt because he watched everyone else do the stunt and get paid on it.
Sure.
He grabbed a parachute with a reserve that he himself had condemned 30 days earlier and jumped out of the helicopter
Well,
with it.
this is why the lawsuit never continued.
No. But, yeah, it's
not just about a lawsuit. It's about a human's. It's from our perspective as prop people. It's these are the kind of things that I've said all the time. Just double check where you can, but you're not an expert, and you can't be expected to be the expert.
No, and it's rust is gonna fall into this category as well, right? And I tell people every accident is not just an accident.
Yeah.
Every accident is multiple things going wrong,
Steps
adding up to it becoming
Correct.
an accident.
Right.
There's a lot of roads a story can go down.
Yeah.
And, to get to that point, there's a lot of people involved, a lot of, listen, I don't know everything about it, but there's negligence, there's, ineptitude. This doesn't just happen.
No.
And you may have stumbled across, or you did stumble across some of the reasons why it did.
It just, there was a time where I think I started to forget about paying attention to my spidey sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now it's premier. It's if I'm feeling something, something's wrong.
Well, that's the lesson.
I could tell you a few other stories, and that would take up the rest of the afternoon.
I do think people need to be aware of when something doesn't feel right.
It's not right.
Correct.
Yeah.
And step up, and I say this to prop people all the time. Stand up and say something. If it doesn't feel right, I would rather you feel stupid later. Oh, boy, that was a big nothing. But don't sit on that feeling or that information.
Well,
Share it.
Yeah.
We're creating art, basically.
Yeah, and we're there to come back tomorrow and do it again.
Right, exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it looks like not too long after that you started to actually go in hard into prop mastering, and I mean, you did some pretty big titles pretty quickly. I mean, you had Reindeer Games, Get Carter, and 13 Ghosts and stuff like that. So when did you really start jumping in full with both feet then?
Well, at that point, I'm in full feet.
You're in, yeah.
But those types of shows and those budgets were in the $40 to $60 million range.
Yeah.
Which is a doable thing if you're still that prop department that has your first assistant and your buyer and your 3-person department. We could prep a show and I could take it to the floor with my own on-set experience.
Right.
And they were amazing shows. The Pledge, incredible show. Like talking to my wife on the phone every day. It's like, I am so blessed. And she goes, "What are you talking about? You're exhausted." And I said, "I get to go to work with Sean and Jack every day. Like, how much better do you want it?"
Is that right? That's great. And Sean and Jack, what are their last names?
Sean Penn?
Yes.
Jack
Nicholson.
Yeah.
That's pretty fantastic. Is your wife in this business? Or is she
she's costume designer.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, so she understands of your trials, tribulations, excitements, and...
Well, we met on set. She was the on-set supervisor. I was the first assistant. I think it was Comrades of Summer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is she still a designer?
Yep.
Great.
Wow. Did you guys get to work on more shows after that together? Or?
She was costume designer on 13 Ghosts.
Oh,
She was costume designer on the Core. Not the Core. She worked on the Core. The Andromeda Strain was another one we worked together
Just
on.
to be clear, what's her name, please?
Jenny Gullett.
There we go. Jenny Gullett. Thank you. Costume design. Hello, Jenny. Just make sure she gets a shout out.
yeah. So before we get even deeper, I want to know what the Vancouver. What's it like prop mastering in Vancouver? Like, what's the system there? How different is it as far as your knowledge from LA? I know we have a lot more resources here, but from your perspective, what's it like to prop a show in Vancouver?
I think the first time I was exposed to that is when we came down to finish off Firestorm. And it was the first time I ever got to go to ISS, and it was the old location. Mm-hmm. And I remember there was a place in the center you walked in, and there was a dog sled or something hanging above it.
Yeah. Okay. There was stairs that walk up to a landing.
But everywhere you walked, there was like so much stuff: the gold room, this room, the graphics, the armory,
all in one
all
place.
the trailers parked out back, and everything else. And I'm going to say it, and you guys can beat me up in the parking lot afterwards. But my feeling was anyone in LA can do this job.
Yeah, it seemed to be easier.
Well, you've got everything.
Everything, yeah. Well, that's what I mean.
In Vancouver, we had nothing, and we're finding this stuff. We're out scouring around and getting yellow pages from Seattle because that's where we're supposed to be filming or whatever, and trying to get content. And it was just a different way of going about things. But what I also noticed, and this was, say, the last time I was back, was the camaraderie here. If you go to ISS and Guillaume de la Roche is there and Chris Peck and somebody else, and they've all just come off shows, Greg takes you for lunch.
Yeah.
And they all sit. There's rooms there where they set up offices and talk and share among themselves. We don't do that in Vancouver. There are prop masters in Vancouver. I could walk down the street and right by them, I wouldn't even know who they are.
Yeah, well, the ISS now still has prep rooms, which I think is great. A space for you to...
They have more prep rooms now.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the beauty of that is exactly what you're talking about. It's a camaraderie, it's a community, and you get to see, I can be doing something and see Mikey working on his truck, and we get to check and touch base and, share some stories that help us emotionally and professionally.
It's almost crippling in a way, though, because when you're pressed on a show for time, and you're running into a friend every 2 seconds in the hallway.
It's exhausting. Like, I can't.
I gotta go.
Gotta go.
Yeah.
Well, you must have that look on your face when you're walking down the hall. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Stay away from him. Right?
Everybody knows the look of a busy person.
Yeah, it's like, hey, that's it.
Hey, brother.
Yeah. My man. See ya.
Yeah, barreling carts out of the truck.
I mean, that's the nature, and that's where PMG started.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because of that. Because you all talk together and you know each other. And that's probably the one thing that's lacking the most in Vancouver.
Do you think it's a competitive thing, or
It's competitive because, for the most part, a lot of us were competing for the same jobs.
Right.
And someone like me, I talked about snakes and ladders earlier today, you're climbing this ladder. Like, I'll go to an interview and I didn't get that show.
Right.
Because they haven't hired that guy yet. And you have production managers in Vancouver, not so much now, but there was a time where each production manager seemed to have their own stable of people.
Right. And so when a show came in or started there, and if that production manager got the gig, the odds are you weren't going to be getting it.
Oh, I lost to a Chris Nolan show because of that.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. There was a show, I won't talk about that, but I met Chris Nolan. He says, "Oh my God, you did the pledge. You did the pledge. That's exactly what this show feels like." And he was so excited that I was there and that I was available. And then I get this call. We've decided to go in another direction.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, who might that be? Oh, really? What a surprise.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So
That used to happen a lot. I came here from Pittsburgh, and although I was a set dresser, we didn't have a lot of. When I first moved here, I was shocked to see ISS, that it's a one-stop shopping, and there were only a handful of shows that would come through all the time. So we spent years trying to ingratiate ourselves with the people that came from Los Angeles, UPMs or set decorators or prop people, and it feels similarly styled. Everything was competitive.
Yeah, I'm trying to, right off the bat, I think knowing everybody through the PMG is who I met a lot of people, but I'm trying to I think naturally I'm altering. Being friends with everybody makes the blow a little bit less.
Yeah.
Because when I know I'm going in for an interview and I didn't get it, and then I hear, oh, but this person got it, I was like, oh, well, I love them. They deserve it. You know what I mean? It's like it's hard to really beat yourself up too much. And it's like, well, they're a great prop master. You know, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't purely political.
No, it's like I would have done that show great, but they're going to do it great too.
They're going to be fine.
And that's what I'm hoping is going to spread. With the PMG is a lot of us just supporting each other a little bit more when it comes down to that stuff, but also suggesting stuff. So yeah, if anybody out there in the PMG gets offered, I don't know, like a podcast show or a climbing show, maybe they'll be like, Mikey's pretty good at that. To throw it out there.
Or a sports show, or a baseball show,
I would not be great on
Call
that.
Call me. I'm your boy. I know everything about everybody.
I mean, I mentioned Shogun earlier,
Yes.
and why I did the show.
Well, let's back up because this is a new podcast.
Yeah.
We spent some time with Dean earlier today. You should know that Dean is also did this TV series Shogun. And,
Amongst other things,
yeah,
yes.
and this is a huge show that hopefully he can elaborate for all of you, this audience, on.
Well,
how was your experience on Shogun? What did you find the collaboration with the Japanese culture? How did it segue into your team? What kind of changes did you have to make to welcome basically
It's a lot of
crew?
questions,
Yeah,
Jeff.
but I'm just like, I don't know where
have
I
to
need
go
to
way back.
Yeah, go way back.
So we're coming out of COVID. We're going to work on Atom Project. There's still no vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
They rented the P&E, which was a Pacific North Entertainment Exhibition Center. So we had the Forum. We had all these empty, huge buildings. They brought in ADCO trailers. So many people per trailer. They had the steel fence all around it. You got the laser beam at your forehead every morning when you went to work.
Sure.
And it was scary. And we finished that. And Helen Jarvis was the supervising art director on that show. And Guy Dias had called her up saying, hey, I've been called and approached to do Shogun. I want you to be the supervising art director. And she goes, oh, yeah, sure, okay. But I'm in Europe right now and I'm working on something. But they're coming to Vancouver, and can you meet them and show them around? So Helen spent a lot of her own time showing them locations, reading the scripts, being helpful, anticipating this job coming down the pipe with Guy. And then the show in Europe got into trouble because of COVID and actors sick and, I don't know, weather conditions or this or that. It got pretty well delayed. And Guy one day called her and said, look, I've turned down the show. And so Helen's sitting there, and then somebody else comes along and they've interviewed. And she finally got to a point after showing and getting to know all these people. She said, maybe I hang around for the first two, but maybe I go on after that. And she comes back to the office, and like an hour later, the phone rings, and they say, the more we think about it, the more we think you should design the show.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, she took a lot of time putting together a portfolio. She has to get vetted by the studio and everything else, like anyone else has to.
Right.
And they went for it. Well, I owe most of my career to Helen. Being a supervising art director, I've worked with her, I don't know how many times we could compare on IMDb, but enough that every time she gets a show, I get an interview. And every time I get an interview, as I was starting to come up the snakes and ladders, I was getting more and more shows and getting exposed to better designers, better this and that, and had her support through all of it. So it was the least I could do to do Shogun and help support Helen.
Yeah.
Did you understand the scale of what you were dealing with when you first said that?
That's what freaked me out.
It's a great question. Yeah.
I mean, oh yeah, I love Helen. You bet I'll help you, whatever you need.
No, it was huge. Just looking at it already, thinking about it, the scale, everything in a culture that I don't know. But as it turns out, everything has so many layers of detail in it,
Right.
For very specific reasons. And you've got 22 weeks to figure that out. And it just, you talk about being a prop master or waking up in the middle of the night, I call it the death rolls. 2 a.m, as soon as my brain opens up or my eyes open, my brain starts, and I'm done for the night.
Yeah.
And I got to a point where I was getting so stressed, and I'd read maybe 3 or 4 of the scripts. We had 10 sitting there, and I'm prepping, and I just had to go home. I had to go home and stay home for, I think, 2 days, 3, the rest of the week, and read the rest of the scripts. Like, I had to get it. And yeah, the rest is history, I guess. But yeah, it was huge. Not the kind of thing I would suggest anyone my age at the time take on.
How much prep did you get for that?
Well, it was going to be 22 weeks, and then I got a call from the producer saying, "Hey, I hear you're a sailor and know everything about boats, and we don't have a picture car guy, and we need 24 boats for this show we're going to do. Helen says you could probably build them." I'm going like, "Sure, okay, we'll build boats."
Well, was this before you knew the script?
I
knew that
I'd read a couple scripts.
I see. So you weren't unfamiliar with the project.
No.
Wasn't a blind call. Build us some boats.
Oh, build your boats.
Oof.
And was that how difficult was it a task? I guess this is a good time to jump into. 'Cause you do a lot of manufacturing shows. Like you've done a lot of units for like X-Men and a lot of stuff. You did the new Tron series and Planet of the Apes. So there's a lot of manufacturing building in that. I know, like you were saying earlier, that we do have a lot of shops in town at our fingertips. So how do you approach something like that, where obviously you're going to have to build hundreds of props for in there? Boats in this case. Do you get that done at the same place that is building the props for you?
No, on Shogun we brought people in-house. I had 3 at one point that were carpenters with a boat repair background. One guy in particular, Quill, has a boat repair place on one of the islands. He knew how to loft, make molds. I had a book called Traditional Japanese Boats, written by Douglas Brooks. He lives in Vermont now. He had spent 30 years of his life traveling back and forth to Japan, studying from aging out boat builders. I think the youngest one he said was 79. Wow. And he spent 29 years with them. You go to these little shops, nothing is being recorded. It's little shapes and pieces of wood on the wall with markings on it, and that's their measurements for the strikes for the boat, depending on how long you're making them. Is it a 3-strike boat, like 3 planks to make the sides? Or he learned all of that, and he put it into a book, because culturally, Japan is not preserving the knowledge of boat building.
Yeah.
But Douglas Brooks is. So Douglas Brooks is basically the world authority. I bought his book, which is great, but not enough. So I got in touch with him, and we hired him to be a consultant. And then he had lofted some of the boats he had actually worked on building, and he had those files. So we were able to build 35-foot whaleboats based on Douglas's lofted drawings.
How Hollywooded are these boats? Are they exactly to how they would have been built, or are they like done with like lighter materials?
It's filled of styrene and styrofoam.
No. We're using 3/4-inch marine plywood. There'd be 4 8-foot sheets, scarfed, laminated together. Give you a 32-foot piece. We would loft out on that and cut the piece. The rest is basically garbage.
Yeah.
And we'd start building the boats. You build them upside down, so you start with the bottom of the boat, then you do your first strike and your third strike, or second strike, and then you take the boat off the mold, and then you start dealing with the inside. So I was buying clear fir, clear cedar, clear, like everything's wood, which amused the Japanese, because they go like, well, at home we use fiberglass.
Yeah.
So we were building boats, cargo boats, canal boats. I bought a bunch at auction, which are the dragon boats. They're used a lot in Vancouver for racing, for not the Japanese community, but we cut off the stern of the boat, and then we'd take the cut-off pieces from our strikes on the whale boats and fit them to the dragon boats and give us the same shape at a smaller scale and start building those.
How many boats did you guys make?
25, 4, something like that.
But what was your background that he knew that you might be able to do this?
Might it be a nice scenic carpentry background.
Right.
I don't know. I knew
Somebody
tools.
pitched you. Somebody pitched your services, and you said, "Okay, I guess I'm making boats."
Helen.
Yeah, he was also dive trained too.
Yeah,
so
well, maybe so.
had to jump off of a boat probably.
Yeah,
At some
well, but this is pretty
No,
specific.
I'd spent the last few years like doing some serious sailing. I did 2 Atlantic crossings. One was my 2 nephews on a 100-foot schooner and
Oh, cool.
stuff like that.
Well, so that life experience
it's
is
hell.
translated. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
hell.
Well, now we know who to blame. Helen.
Or thank.
Yeah.
I mean, to this day, between Helen and Elizabeth Wilcox, they both have their British accents. But we meet for tea once in a while. Yeah, I had to learn to make tea.
So they're still friends.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but Mikey's point, original question: how long was prep? So you spent time building boats, and then you went into the prop department.
I was prop master. Hired 3 guys that were boat builders.
Right.
One guy was basically scarfing plywood. The other 2 were laying up boats. We could turn over 1 whaleboat off the mold a week.
Wow.
And then I jobbed out the cargo boats to another company that did laser cutting in marine plywood and did their own way of doing things. And it just became this separate budget
Shop,
item.
and you were just running that unit.
The
as well.
noise of the screaming, planers and everything else while we're trying to focus and work was a little much. But
Where are those boats now? Any idea?
they're in Dairyland being stored.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe for season 2. I don't know. In the meantime, we're spending all this time on Airtable I had 2 Japanese buyers in Japan, starting every Sunday morning at 5 p.m. or Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m. I'd be there Monday 9 or 10 and start talking to Tomo and his buyer about what I'm looking for. And we're looking for everything. Like,
Yeah, well, you wouldn't have it.
Pipes, smoking, tobacco bags, matchlock rifles, powder pouches, powder horns, how to carry the shot. Everything was different, but you could find it. The stuff was out there. Matchlocks, we were buying, I think in the end we bought 16 matchlocks at different auctions. By the time they made it here, we discovered that they were so rusted. The rust was so bad on the barrels, it was distorting and breaking the stocks apart. Took them to Felcan Enterprises, Tom. They started soaking them in ultrasound and started getting the rust off. And if I showed you some of the pictures of these barrels, of these matchlock rifles, 300-year-old rifles with inlays of koi fish and dragons and all this stuff. If the Ministry of Cultural Affairs in Japan had realized what they were letting out of the country, they would have seized them.
Wow. So you got lucky that they were rusted.
And in the end, all 16 fired. We've got them all going. They're so simple. Every piece on a matchlock is held together with bamboo.
Jeez.
Even the little piece that holds the trigger.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, of course, because if you're going to repair the gun and you need something and you're at war, what do? You go to a bamboo tree and get some stuff to fix your rifle with, right?
Something that's just everywhere.
Yeah.
That's smart.
And now you're the expert on Japanese historical.
Historically, yeah.
Yeah.
Our saddles for all these samurai. We end up at this guy's house. He was outside of Fukushima. He had lost 2 of his warehouses to the tsunami. So everything he had left was in his house. And Tomo went up there, and he's showing me. We're doing a Zoom call. He phoned me at like 10 o'clock at night, and we're on it until 3, 4 in the morning my time.
Yeah.
He's walking me through the house to these different saddles. How much is that one? Oh, he wants 20,000 US. Okay, keep moving. How about that one? 5,000. Okay, put that one aside, that one aside.
Wow.
And the fenders that hang off the saddle, and the reins, and the bits, and the stirrups, and he had everything. So we bought enough initially to do 8. And then I thought the saddles I bought at auction were too small because they're tiny.
Yeah, the horses were smaller too.
But when I got the ones from Japan in, I did the measurements and I got, oh my God, I got 4 more saddles here. So now I can start moving things around. So that gives me 4 more horses, and then we bought more and eventually ended up with enough for like 20. But this stuff is antique, beautiful lacquer if you look at the finishes. And one of them was broken, so I had to cut it apart. And underneath it a little spot where no one's going to see it, there's this inscription. and I get it translated. It says March, lucky day, 1634,
Wow.
and the name of the maker.
Wow. But
Jeez.
We're
Hand
getting-
etched.
Yeah, we're getting lacquer. They come in a box. There's sort of a lid. You open it up, and each piece is in a cloth type bag or silk. There was a receipt inside one of the boxes that this had been bought as an antique 200 years ago, but never used or opened, because now we had bought it again.
wow. That's crazy.
100 years later, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where's that stuff now?
Yeah.
Same thing,
dear,
same
yeah,
containers.
It's with the boats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you sit in this room and you start looking around at all the things we have, and it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable what we amassed.
Wow.
Did you ever get to go to Japan on the
No.
show or anything? I bet you want to go now.
I don't know if I do. But it was just amazing, and it's interesting with the Emmys coming out right now. The sound mixer Michael Williams has he's been nominated, and he put it on Facebook thanking me for giving him the real pieces that he could record the real sound off of, that took us back to the period
Oh,
we
that's
were
beautiful.
filming.
Oh, wow.
Like that's
That's a lovely
Pretty
gesture.
amazing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty special.
I'm surprised I'm not choking up or tearing up more, because some
Well,
of the stuff's pretty emotional sometimes.
Generally speaking, how was the experience as a property master, as a person, in hindsight? Do it again? Never want to do it again? You've had your fill of something like that?
If I were younger and they said season 2 and 3,
Yeah.
I'd probably go, yeah. But to do what I did again right now, no, I don't think I
Well,
would.
but the second season would be easier. You know, the players take all that emotional baggage out of the way, no?
Is it ever really easier, Jeff?
Well, to me it has been, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Multiple seasons, you know, it's maybe a new storyline, but the same players, you know the shortcuts, you know.
I think if for me to do it at my age right now, I would go in with the experience I had from the show and maybe oversee certain things, but I don't think I would want to do the whole job,
Yeah.
because the whole job involves budgeting.
Yeah, yeah.
It involves all the POs, all the tracking budgets, all the, all that stuff that we haven't talked about at all today. But there's a lot of you have to do now as a head of department, prop master, that was never the case. When I got in the industry, it was a cost plus thing, building scenery. You just go to accounting, get more cash, go buy
Right.
more lumber, keep building, right?
Right.
Now it's budgets.
Enormous amount of paperwork and follow up. And do you have people that help you do that off camera?
I have a first assistant in the office that is, without her, yeah, you can't do it. Every Friday I have a cost report.
Yeah. What's her
And-
name?
Andrea Tully.
Thank you, Andrea Tully. It's an invaluable, skill set.
Yeah.
It's, when you're going through it, and this was on Tron, things are changing. Scripts are changing, revisions. You know what things have cost, and she's tracking all of it, and she knows where we can pull money from, where money is going to be tight, and everything else. It allows me to make decisions about taking on something else without having to go to the producers and cry money again. It was sort of a running joke. I think Joachim, our director, thought Dean's budget was always so much bigger than everyone else's because I never said no.
Good. She's invaluable.
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah. I have a similar assistant that manages all of that for me now, and it's, thank God.
Yeah. I know we got like 20 minutes left. A movie that I saw that I was kind of blown away by, and I really, really liked, was The Atom Project. And there was a lot of really cool stuff. And I mean, Ryan Reynolds I'm a huge Ryan Reynolds fan.
Oh, yeah.
He's absolutely fantastic. So tell us about that experience. There was a lot of really cool stuff in there, and you're dealing with a lot of futuristic props, which is to a lot of prop masters kind of a dream to do, which you've gotten to do many times actually. So when you get to create stuff that takes place as battle props in the future, what approach do you take?
Oh, that's kind of interesting. Futuristic films are kind of the funniest. from a prop standpoint, because
Yeah.
as time goes on, things get smaller.
Right.
Batteries get smaller.
right.
The prop gets smaller. It becomes insignificant at some point. So, and everyone has an opinion about what the future is going to bring.
Right.
So it's a real hard one to deal with. Sean Levy had produced a film in Toronto called Kin, K-I-N. It was directed by two South Korean brothers. The film itself did not do very well. But there was some design houses that had worked on the film that Sean was really impressed with. So I got to Vancouver. We were in our little Quonset huts and stuff like that. And he goes, I want you to reach out to these people. So one of them was on Avatar, of course, not available. The others, similar stories. Maybe we reached out to a company called Super Vixen. These two guys, Daniel and Morton. They live in Sydney, Australia. And the production designer had said, well, I trust you. We've worked together on other shows. I don't want to be involved in props. You just do the props. And you're going like, thanks, dude. That's like
that's
no tension there, no pressure. So I had a Zoom meeting with Super Vixen, and I said, typically I want to be heavily involved in the research and my input, but I've never worked with you guys before. So what I want to do first is see how you're going to start out. It's kind of like me getting a new buyer in. I go to the store and buy scissors.
Yeah.
And they come back from the dollar store with a pack of 6 pairs of scissors for $1.99. I just take them and chuck them in the trash and go like, we're professionals. We don't use junk like that. Never do that again. If I want a pair of scissors or I want a set pair of side cutters or something, they're proto or they're something else. They're high end. We're professionals as well as everyone else. We work with good tools.
Right.
Sorry. So Super Vixen, they came across. I showed you that one that was on the file this morning. The initial packet I got from them, and it was basically a hand-drawn image of, say, a mag cell or one of the hover boards or whatever we're going to use. There was they had read the script. They had a little included thing there, a little paragraph about what they thought and the methodology behind what they were thinking. And then they had a few images onto the side, which was either materials, the materiality of the piece, the types of finishes. Think of powder-coated paint or carbon fiber or, CNC machining or CNC machining marks or, electronics or this or that. So I'm looking at it and I'm a little freaked because I'm thinking this is going to take me forever to deal with this.
It's too many choices. Too much depth, not enough?
No, totally. Typically, you want a nice, shiny little thing you can dangle in front of the director and, and entertain them with, right?
The new cool,
I'm a hero prop.
Yeah, new cool toy, right?
But you very rarely can you get somebody to say, well, just take a moment and let's have a discussion about this.
Right. Okay.
But very quickly with Sean, what I found out was he's quick on decision making. And I had my little Sharpie pen, and I've got my 11 by 17s, and he's got his, and we're on a Zoom call. He goes, well, I like that upper image in the right-hand corner there, so I'd circle it. And I like this. I'd circle that. And no, I don't like that, so I'd X through that. And we went through the whole book. And at the end, I close it, and I'm going like, oh, my God. I'm going to have a Zoom call with Super Vixen, and now I have information for them. The dialogue has started. It was like the tool. So then he likes this.
Now you start getting a palette of ideas and a direction to go.
So a very present director right off the bat is basically what you're saying, just alleviated a lot of...
I've used that same thing since, and it works.
Right.
So I'm not saying it's just because it's Sean, but Sean is very talented in his own right. So... for that, I'll give him credit, and he set me at ease because he really liked what he was seeing.
But that was somebody he had liked previously,
yes.
So perhaps they knew his sensibilities and how he liked things to be laid out, and that's no.
They could reach out to him via email. He knew them well enough to respond to an email.
But they knew from his previous relationship kind of what he might respond to.
Probably.
Yeah. So that's helpful that they had a little bit of his shorthand now.
So 2 days later, I started getting higher quality images of mag cells and metal finishes and powder coat finishes, and you're not given one and just three views of it. You're given all of them because of the 3D file they're working on. They can lay them all up this way, and then flip them sideways, and and you come back to them very quickly with, what do you think about this? Another Sharpie. This one here. It's perfect.
Great.
Check. Okay, let's move to the next page. Now we're cooking with gas.
Yeah.
And we just start going.
Great.
And I was really getting along well with them, Daniel and Morton, and two young guys that sign off on a set of drawings, meet you at the pub, or something like that. And we'd go at it, and a couple of days later something else would start showing up. And then there were other things, like at the end when Mark Ruffalo reaches in and gets the crystal hard drive that's the stabilizer for time travel.
Right.
I had this idea that it had to be menacing. You didn't know if he was reaching in, if he was going to lose his arm.
Yeah.
And you needed a reveal. I didn't want it floating in the air and everyone looking at it for the longest time. So that was that handle he moved in, and it was on red, like don't touch, and then he clicks it and it turns green, and then he pulls out this sort of drawer slide to expose the crystal hard drive, and it's glowing away, and time travel's starting to get all unstable and everything else. And there's this dialogue between he and Ryan about he doesn't know what's going to happen. This could destroy the world. I don't know. And he just goes, fuck it. And he reaches in and grabs the thing and tosses it to the younger Adam, who later tosses it into the vortex of the time travel machine imploding on itself. And it was funny. As we were working, Mark, the first time we would go, and I'm going, it should be really careful.
Yeah, a little
and
less
once I explained what was happening, okay. So every take, it just became more and more subtle and more careful and more trepidatious and the whole thing. And at the end, a couple days later, it was his final day. I'm taking his chair back out to the trailer, and I'm going, and thank you for selling that prop.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Well, but you also had a voice in that. You were part of the process, and you bring a great deal of value. And, much like warming somebody's hands, you're also serving the project and moving the project forward with your expertise and your life experience.
We're building these props, and Mark's going, oh my God, if this was Avengers, this would all be green screen.
Hey, right.
The grenade actually works.
Yeah.
Right.
It turns on. What? This is nuts.
Yeah.
Right.
And handling things.
Adding the fixture aspect to it. Also.
I'm old school, so anything I can put in camera, I do.
Yeah.
I can't count on VisFX to ultimately do what I want to do. I want to tell my own story. I get accused of being like the method prop master or something like that.
No, that's not method. I mean, it's the more fun thing, and I mean, it's the difference. I think, in my opinion, it's to using the real blank firing firearms as opposed to doing it in VFX too. It's all what's going to sell it to the actor, and help them perform a better performance, which is, I think, half of our job, right? Is to help them sell the performance. Yeah, is to move everything forward. So anything you can do to make it, I mean, when something you hit, a futuristic prop especially, you hit a button and it starts to glow, everybody is like, that's cool.
It's tension and it's storytelling.
Right. Yeah. It's cool. And I mean, we displayed a lot of your props at Comic-Con last year. I remember even just taking them out of the shipping crates to set them on display. I was like the hoverboard, just like setting them up and plugging it in and just starting to glow and like bringing the brightness. I was like, that's freaking cool.
Mikey was pretty.
That is so
I was witness to it, and he was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
He's hyperventilating.
No, that's the thing.
It's hover decks, I don't know if you've seen the footage of them, but we had a 300-foot long, almost like cable cam line.
Oh, yeah.
With two stunt guys on them. So the boots for the hover deck were the snowboard boots. But the deck, the aluminum part, effects had to machine and mill so that we knew it wasn't going to buckle or fold and it was going to be safe. And then we take it over and start putting our 3D printed parts on. And now it's going to be outdoors in the elements, and we want to shine these real cool lights top and bottom, so when they come out of the time jet, you see there's, VFX can key up on that, and give you the vortex and all the other stuff. And I ran them up into GVRD, and it was Brian Smers was second unit director, and He goes, great, those look great. Let's put them on the wires. Within like half an hour,
Really?
the stunt guys are on it, and both of them, one in particular, could really sell the idea that he was surfing.
Yeah.
And that was fun. And that's the first prop I've probably made that was solely used for second unit.
Oh, yeah.
You never saw it any other time.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Mikey would love to have been on that second unit by the judging of his reaction when he.
No, I like this. I love these types of movies, and I mean, they're just enjoyable
And
films. And
the
they're really
other-
cool prop wise.
The other kicker was a new company. They'd reached out to me on Christmas Chronicles, and I'm going, well, we're making reindeer reins and chewing leather here. We're not really building anything. Go across the road. There's someone else in another show over there doing something, so they went over there and did some props for that show. And then he just kept track of me and reached out to me on Adam Project, and our offices were pretty close to where his shop was, and I went down to see his shop. You walk in there, and it's a place called Pantheon Design. And it's 5 young engineers who've worked on rapid prototype things for motorcycles. During COVID, they worked on some medical ventilator system with a company that ended up being turbo-driven so that one unit could supply oxygen to 4 patients. Because that was a big thing coming up, that if people really ended up in ICU, how are you going to ventilate them? And they're into 3D printing and all this other stuff. And they're so keen. And I'm going, okay, well, let's try. And he says, well, we work with this engineer, and he has carbon fiber infused material we print with. And they'd made brackets and things for motorcycle headlights, and this stuff was strong. Where typically 3D printed stuff isn't that strong. Not strong enough to
not
be
to
on a
this
show,
day,
not for a prop.
Not practical.
So we started out with guns, and we started out with the smaller ones. Meanwhile, Unlimited Design was building the grenades and a lot of the ones with the DMX boards.
DMX boards are lighting, Wi-Fi.
Digital
lighting. You can do from a mobile iPad.
I can tell you, if you're going to budget, just plan on $1,000 every time you use one.
Any blinky light nowadays is $1,000 DMX.
Yeah.
Yeah. But 8 channels, you get a lot of control.
Sure.
Anyway, so we built that. We built the hover deck. And then over the Christmas hiatus was when I finally got a design from Super Vixen for this thing for the time travel, right? And I'm showing it to Sean, and he goes, this is cool.
Good.
And I'm going, so what do you think? And he says, we should build it.
Yeah.
I'm going like, yeah. So we're over Christmas hiatus. This is typical. Sometimes we run into this construction. There'd been this white hole in every drawing since day one. It was like the elephant in the room. This is where this thing is supposed to
but
go.
We don't know what the thing is yet.
We don't know what it is. And I heard it was set deck and production designer talking one day, well, we could do the bezel and props could do something else. I'm going like, it's 17 inches in diameter. Give me the bezel. Give me something. Like, come on. You want to do it all? Yeah. Okay. I'm so sure that we're going to do it. And then we start building, and the first thing I had to do was get a aluminum outside diameter 4-foot long tube fabricated that was 17 inches OD, because where do you buy one of those? Yeah.
That's huge.
And we were working over Christmas hiatus. They went out and pretty well borrowed, I don't know how many different 3D printers, and built a climate-controlled room with 14 units. And we're printing 24/7, cranking out 200 parts for this prop.
Wow.
And then mixing things up like, well, we should use copper tube and we should heat it up because it's part of the cooling thing, and let's lose some of this and put some carbon fiber on it, and started dressing up and tweaking, and went and installed it in the set, and production designer saw it, and I can show you my phone, but he's the first guy to want to have a picture taken in front of it.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of cool. That's always a good sign.
Yeah, congratulations.
Always a good sign.
And Yeah, it was just a high point.
Did we fill the void in the drawings at some point?
Yes.
And then there was a magical day when there
Oh
was
God!
something dropped in.
Super Vixen did this. The one that sold it was they did a reverse looking out from the
that's
device
cool.
with Mark Ruffalo
Sure.
Reaching
Reaching
in
for it?
from
Yeah.
outside.
That's how you sell
That
it.
Sean.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That was it.
Did
right
they
there.
use that as a shot?
Yes.
Great. Well, that's what I'm saying. You know, that your influence was all over the place.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, I know you just finished recently working on the new Tron, and I know when does that come out?
Well, it's going to be a minute still, I think.
Right.
Oh, it's next year.
Yeah.
Next year still.
2025.
So yeah, I wait to the end because I know we can't really talk about it too much, but I know there's lots of fun, exciting stuff that we can expect to see on that, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Another bucket list dream opportunity.
Really?
The funny thing was the first call came in and I said, "This is the third time you've asked me to do Tron 3."
Yeah.
Because
kept
Oblivion
pushing.
originally was going to
Yeah.
be Disney, and they were going to do Oblivion Tron 3,
Mm-hmm.
and I had Oblivion. Disney realized, oh my God, this is PG-13. We haven't bought Fox yet. We only do PG. We've spent $18 million on this thing, but we're not going to do it. You're allowed to shop it around.
Mm.
Joe, the director, I'm on MI4 with Chris Peck. I'm on the car park unit, and I see Joe walking across the floor. I'm going, Joe, what are you coming here for? Well, I'm coming to talk to Tom Cruise. Oh, because Universal had this pay-or-play deal with Cruise, but the film he was going to do was R-rated. They didn't want to spend the money it was going to cost. So they pulled the plug on it, but they're on the hook for him. So they paid Disney the $18 million to get the rights to do Oblivion, and they did Oblivion. And it was Doug Harlocker, and I would chuckle back and forth because it seems through our careers he did a Godzilla, then I did a Godzilla.
Oh yeah.
He did Oblivion, and I almost did Oblivion. Then he phones me, I'm coming to Vancouver to do Tron 3. Do you want to work with me? And then the show gets pushed.
So
And
you're doing Tron 3.
Doug leaves. I get a phone call. Will you do Tron
Oh, that's
3?
great.
It's just hilarious through the years.
It's amazing.
I've never been in the same conversation with Doug Harlocker, so I'm thrilled to hear that I'm in the room with someone who has been.
Yeah.
Well, come on, 12 Monkeys. Like, look at some of the stuff he's done.
I
It's
know,
like,
listen to
crazy.
that.
He should be on this. He's going to be on this podcast. Hopefully, by the time this come out within the next couple months.
Great.
So he's already agreed to it. So Doug, I'm holding you to it. But that's awesome. We could definitely talk all day, but I think we're getting to the end of our time, and we definitely did not do a master class today. That was couple months
That was a
ago.
long
So
time.
yeah,
You
that
could
was a
tell
long time.
by Dean's shirt.
Yeah, Dean came all the way back to do this podcast as opposed to the master class. So let's say that. But the good part, I guess, about since Tron's coming out next year, it'll be 2025. That means you're going to be eligible for a Property
PMG
Master Guild
Guild
Award next year for Shogun, and then
And the
eligible
year
the
after that.
following year for Tron.
This is good.
So spread it all out to spread your chances out a little bit over multiple
Oh,
years.
that's interesting.
Yeah. So if you can stay in your retirement, at least you can still have the.
Stay alive.
Yeah. Oh man, you look. I think all the climbing years added. If you didn't die then, it added years to it now.
Well, okay. My mother lived to be almost 107.
Oh,
Wow.
Lord have mercy. And she was a rock climber.
Yeah, she taught me rock climbing.
There you go.
She carried me in a little
Yeah,
backpack
yeah.
through up Everest.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming in and hanging out with us today, Dean. It was really awesome to hear about your career.
Yeah, you've been a joy to be with. Months ago when we did it's been a great pleasure of mine to have you, and we've spoken on the phone. I'm really thrilled to spend some time with you and hear some of your tales.
It's been a long time coming, and I'm really super happy that I was able to jump on a plane and come down. and
we are too.
Meet, break bread.
Yeah.
Greatly appreciate it.
No, definitely. And then if all of you guys out there, Dean and Chris Peck, they did a master class on prop manufacturing that should be available on the official PMG YouTube page. So make sure you go over and search Property Masters Guild on YouTube, and you should be able to check that out. Really good class, very informative, and covers just a multitude of different subjects on how to do prop manufacturing. So please go and check that out. It's pretty great. Any closing words, Jeff?
No, thank you both very much. Thanks, Remy, for jumping in. And
Thanks,
honored
Remy.
to, and I hope Chris Call gets back quickly.
Yeah.
Not particularly in my wheelhouse. Mikey, thank you.
No, you did
Dean,
great.
once again. Bless you
You
so
did
much.
amazing. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
We're really
I
glad
think
to
you're
have you.
fine. I think a lot of people like hear your voice every once in a while. Thank you to everybody else out there for tuning into another episode of Prop Talk, the official podcast of the Property Masters Guild, brought to you by real working and retired prop masters and associate prop people. If this is your first time listening, please make sure to like, subscribe, or comment wherever you're hearing this or viewing it. If you'd like to know more information about the Property Masters Guild or have any questions for us here at Prop Talk, please be sure to go to propertymastersguild.org. We're also on Instagram @_PMG and all the other socials. Just search Property Masters Guild. Until next time.
Thank you.